It's February 6, 2015. This is Talking Point Live, coming to you live from the campus of Dixie State University. Good morning, my name is Eric Young.
And I'm Jennifer Kohler.
And to teach the show today, we're going to be talking about ISIS and the burning death of a Jordanian pilot. We're also going to be talking about measles and whether or not we should be vaccinating. We'll get into the LGBT issues with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And if we have time, we'll also talk about Bluff Street before we wrap up the show. So stay with us, we'll be right back.
I am a winner. I am Dixie.
SouthernUtahLive.com brings you live streaming and archived on-demand free video, including community and cultural events, local high school and DSU sports, city council, county commission, and chamber of commerce meetings, CEC TV studio interviews with people you know, and important events like the Economic Summit, the St. George Marathon, music concerts, cooking shows, high school graduations, the Doc Utah Film Festival, and more. Go to SouthernUtahLive.com for live streaming and video on demand.
I'm a winner. I'm Dixie.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
People think I'm trash, but they're wrong. Today, I'm just an aluminum can, but one day, I could be a stadium.
Be a little different from what you're watching as far as news coverage. We're very much interested in how the news covers stories. So we're going to be looking at not just the content of the stories, but how they're presented to you, the viewer, and do a little bit of critical analysis to help all of us become a little more sophisticated in how we consume news.
So this is more of a critical conversation, if you will, about how we're receiving the news through different channels and how we might be perceiving the news, the different biases that we might bring to that story. For example, I have my own bias that I'm bringing to these stories today, and Jen's going to have her point of view as we come into that as well. Right. So this is different from Talking Point that you've normally watched, and we're going to be calling those our Talking Point special editions, where we get into conversations about pertinent issues here locally. But Talking Point Live now will come to you weekly, every Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning from the campus of Dixie State University.
So let's start out with, you want to talk about ISIS?
Let's get into ISIS.
All right. So it's a really horrific situation that we're dealing with there. And what Eric and I were talking about the other day is the media coverage on that and about the censorship around that or self-censorship around that. So for example,
Before we continue, let's give just a little bit of context on the story itself.
All right, go ahead.
The story broke last Wednesday, and the story gets into the execution of a Jordanian pilot. His plane was down, and he was taken captive, and they did a very highly produced video, not just of his execution. When I say they, I mean ISIS, and they released the video of a message to get out in terms of recruiting to their cause that way. And obviously they're using the traditional channels that are out there to go through and show this video. And the video is very explicit. I'm not recommending that you go through and take a look at it. It actually gets into, it's the first ISIS video that actually documents the actual death of a hostage. The other ones where the beheadings happened, they would cut away, not show the beheading, and then go back and show the decapitated body. This one gets into the whole execution that way.
Okay, and you know this because you've watched a description of it, but haven't actually seen the footage yourself.
I've
Is
looked
that
at a
right?
number of sources who
Okay.
talk about what happened. My sources, I'm depending on Al Jazeera America, NPR, The Guardian out of the
Okay.
United Kingdom. That
Okay.
way, go through and see what's been going on. And those descriptions go through and match each other. So I'm pretty confident that
Okay.
that's what's going on as far as
Okay.
the video is concerned.
Well, whether to watch it or not watch it, and this is something that I was telling Eric, I feel strongly about witnessing the suffering of someone, honoring that person's suffering or death by not turning my eyes away from it and actually standing as a witness to what's happening with them. Therefore, I have actually tried, unsuccessfully I will say, to watch the video as much as I don't want to see it. I feel like as an American, I feel some sense of a duty to watch an ally paying the price for taking our side, being our ally in this endeavor, and then suffering the ultimate penalty. And this came up in my communication course, censorship and what should we watch and not watch, and who should decide what we see and not see. So, and then you mentioned, Eric, also that it's a recruiting video that ISIS has heavily produced. And so to watch it, there's the old saying, know thy enemy. So to me, personally, and this is totally a personal situation, or personal choice, I wouldn't say to someone, oh, you should watch it. This is just how I feel about witnessing the suffering of somebody that's my ally.
Okay, and I can understand your position that way. We've talked about this a little bit before, where you have somewhat of an allegiance there. First off, that Jordanian pilot wasn't there because of us, because of the United States. They were there going through and defending their cause and what was going on that way. The issue that I had with the video itself and with previous videos that came out with the decapitations that had happened, including the American journalists, and then just most recently with the Japanese individual who was also decapitated, is that these are propaganda pieces.
Right.
And as in any communication model that's out there, if you don't have an audience, you don't have a channel, then you don't have a reason to put that propaganda out there to begin with. Now, granted, ISIS is going to have an audience one way or the other.
Whether we watch or not.
Whether we watch it or not.
Right.
But what I'm saying is the more we can diminish or perhaps narrow that channel, maybe we are less culpable for contributing to its ability to be distributed.
Well, I realize what you're saying about that, because if we don't have an audience here, then it's not going to play here. But I'm not really sure that form of communication, propaganda or not, is not worth knowing about and understanding, because they are the enemy.
But we can get an understanding vicariously through people who have the ability to be trusted to interpret that film and tell us about what's going on.
Get our information filtered through experts.
Yeah, it would be filtered that way.
Yeah.
And that kind of cancels out the whole idea to begin with. But somebody somewhere is going to have some analysis of that.
Right.
When any kind of document or any kind of film comes out, the United States has agencies in place to go through and authenticate the video and then determine the veracity of the message itself, whether or not that is the hostage, or is it staged, or is it actually happening that way.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like the coverage of the effort over there against ISIS has been, say, from the American media?
No, not in any way, shape, or form. Mainly because we have news organizations like Fox News, for example, who are poised to go through and take advantage or exploit the kind of video that's coming out of the Islamic State, or the organization calling itself the Islamic State.
And can you think of, what are you thinking? Are you thinking of this case particularly, or something specific?
This case specifically,
okay.
As far as the video is concerned, Fox has come under fire by a number of news organizations that way, as far as the ethics of playing into the actual agenda of the people who call themselves the Islamic State.
I get what you're saying, but I think a nuanced discussion around propaganda and around filtering the information to us is important to have. So I think to not show it and not have a discussion around how to deal with it, propaganda, for example, we lose out.
But by watching the propaganda, we're playing right into
We could be.
their agenda.
We could be
There's
playing
no could
into
about
it.
It's
Yeah.
that's absolutely that way.
Okay.
You know, we as Americans we pride ourselves on the idea of freedom of speech. We had the whole debacle with Sony Pictures and The Interview, and we swore we would never be censored, but I think that's kind of a different point of view. Well, coming up next in our next segment, we'll get into a discussion about what's happening with this outbreak of measles here in the United States, particularly here in Utah. And after that, we'll get into the LDS Church's position on LGBT non-discrimination legislation. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
I'm Amy Thorpe, host of District 39.
And I'm Bob Sanju, Director of K-12 Learning for the Washington County School District.
Join us for District 39, where we take you inside the Washington County School District to meet the teachers and learn about the programs that ensure your children will succeed.
Okay, so what would you bring to my company?
What do you need?
I need problem-solving skills.
I got through high school without a car, a phone, or a computer.
No college degree, though.
Not yet, but life's taught me a lot, and I'm ready for more.
Well, you're not the typical kind of candidate that I hire. But you are exactly what I'm looking for.
Your company could be missing out on the candidates it needs most. Learn how to find a great pool of untapped talent at gradsoflife.org.
I'm a winner. I am Dixie.
Oh, look, a redhead. Staring contest. You still got it. I know.
Come alive with the forest.
The dad was cute.
You were looking right at us. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
Welcome back to Talking Point. This is Talking Point Live. I'm Eric Young, and this is my co-host Jennifer Kohler. Jennifer, you were vacationing for your anniversary, your birthday down
Right.
in Disneyland
Right.
in December.
I was. We were there New Year's and the first day of the year.
So are you vaccinated? Were you the one responsible for that little outbreak that was going on there?
I think I was vaccinated a long time
Long
ago.
time ago.
Uh-huh.
We won't say how long.
Yes.
As far as
and
that
I was
birthday celebration.
there
is
with
concerned.
10 people in our party, and we had our granddaughter that's 6 and our granddaughter that's 3 with us. We all
Wow.
came home without any red rashes
With no-
or fevers.
No
Yes.
measles that way.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Mhm.
So you talked about the idea of risk and how that's
Communication,
managed, risk
uh-huh.
communication,
Yeah.
how it's managed, and how we consume these ideas. Do we vaccinate? Do we not vaccinate? We have 2 cases right here in St. George of measles currently
Okay.
happening. What's the story?
Well, and it's interesting when you look at the mainstream media, and they're giving us information on, and this is called risk communication when you're talking about, for example, epidemics and things like that. And risk
Like Ebola.
Yes, yeah. So that's called risk communication. And if you look at the mainstream media, you'll notice that, for example, when it comes to vaccinations, the statistics I've read say that only about 3% of the population has an issue at all anti-vaccination. So it's a very small number of people.
And yet that's a very loud voice.
It is a loud voice because of this supposed ethic in journalism where you are obligated, in order to appear to be balanced and fair and unbiased in your coverage, you're obligated to show the other side of the story, or more than one side of the story,
Okay.
right?
Now here's
Yeah.
where we part ways on
All
that,
right.
because you're looking at it from a standpoint of giving equal time to both sides. Even
That's-
though only
that's
3% of
the-
the population go through and say, well, I'm
Right.
not going to vaccinate my kid, or this is an
Right.
issue that way. What I'm saying is that we have media outlets that are going through and actually capitalizing or exploiting the issue,
Yeah.
because it certainly has galvanized the attention of more than just 3% of the population, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
is that truly just due from their ethical obligation to tell the story, or are they going through and capitalizing on it because everybody's looking?
Right.
When it comes to values and what the consumer is doing as they're watching the news, the number one value that's going to resonate with any of us is going to be family and children.
Right.
And that's what the story does. It comes through and says, well, now that we have a measles outbreak, we need to make sure that people involved, children involved in public settings, public schools, all need to be inoculated with the MMR. We need to make sure that's what's going on. My spouse works for a private organization where they do child development. And if your child's not inoculated, they're not admitted. It's just not going to happen along that line. The pushback that happens on the more conservative side of things is, well, we have our right to go through and say, no, I will not be inoculated.
So now you're talking about the political aspect of it.
It certainly ties into this as a story, and that's certainly how it's spun, again, by more right-wing kinds of media channels that are out there.
And so what you're saying just now is right-wing media channels. So you're saying that more liberal news coverage has not exploited or initiated a political context to the coverage?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Oh, okay. Because you emphasize the word right-wing.
Yes.
And it implied the way you said it.
I'm talking about the Rush Limbaughs, the Glenn Becks.
But
don't say it about Glenn Beck.
Yeah.
About Fox News, that type. And certainly MSNBC is going to come up with their side and go through and say, well, everybody should be inoculated, and we're really blowing this out of proportion, and so on. What's the middle ground on that? Where is there a middle ground?
First of all, I'm not a fan of politicizing the issue and making it conservatives versus liberals. Okay, I like to keep it more in the realm of science and out of the realm of politics, because I don't think that's helpful to discuss it in
keeping it in the realm
political.
of science, you're kind of eliminating that right-wing conservative side.
Well, I think everybody can talk about it, okay, but I just don't think it should be a political issue.
That was a jab. I'm just giving you a bad time.
Got it.
Okay?
And I also think that back to this idea of balanced coverage and having more than one side to a story, if only 3% of the population is anti-vaccination, after all of this excitement we've had over the last, maybe 10 years about vaccinations, right?
2009 really is when it kind of first reared its head.
Yeah, 98 was the study in England where it was since discredited out of Great Britain, right? That there's a problem or a connection to autism,
MMR vaccines actually caused autism, even though we've got this great spike happening with autistic diagnoses. There's not a causal link there with MMR.
But it's gotten enough coverage over the last few years that it seems like it's a valid point of view because it's so much in the public discourse. You could say that about global warming as well. There's a small percentage of people that think it's not a phenomenon happening, but that small minority gets almost equal coverage in the public discourse.
According to you,
makes it
according
seem more valid.
to journalistic ethics, in order for them to have a match or a balance.
So maybe they should have a better algorithm or a better formula, not 50-50 necessarily.
Yeah, I'm afraid we're not going to go through and make that determination. It really has to fall back to what the viewer has decided to do, how they channel their information.
Right, the viewer needs to be aware that just because they're seeing a story about something doesn't mean it's a valid point of view. And they have to stop looking at news people and media people and pundit people as if everything coming out of their mouth deserves a thorough hearing.
So what's a better way to investigate that? What kind of critical process needs to be engaged?
Well, first of all, the media, it's interesting. I read a little study on Chinese media and British media covering measles, for example, and health risk. And the Chinese media relates differently to its audience. It tells its audience advice and it quotes government experts. British media doesn't so much offer advice on what to do, but information, lots of information with contrasting points of view, and then creates more of a learning and an investigative atmosphere.
So that allows the viewer maybe to make up their mind or make choices.
And also maybe have a skewed perception of the validity of some of the opposing points of view. So I think your point about the viewer needing to take responsibility for how they interpret information, the viewer needs to be asking themselves, how much confidence do I have in the person that's speaking? What's their role? What's their agenda? And go back to science. I think we have to go back to science and not rely on just what's out there in the public discourse.
So science instead of maybe charisma?
Yes.
Because the reason why we're believing lots of these individuals is because of their ability to articulate it, to have it very highly produced and punch it through and get it out there.
Jenny McCarthy, is that her name? Where she's the lady with the blonde hair that has the son with autism, and she says her science is her son.
Right.
So it's a very emotionally based argument too, and that I'm always skeptical. When someone's appealing to my emotions, I'm like, how about if you appeal to my logic instead?
That's a great tip from a critical standpoint, and that's what we're trying to do here. Coming up next in our next segment, we'll get into the LDS Church's position, their press conference that was held a little while ago on LGBT
and reactions to it.
In reaction to that, LGBT non-discrimination legislation that's coming forward here in the state of Utah. We'll be right back.
I'm a winner. I'm Dixie.
Here in the Washington County School District, we are proud of our commitment to education. This focus on learning gives every child the best chance for academic success. We are proud to introduce the concept of professional learning communities, or PLCs. Now we as educators work together to focus on learning as the outcome and to collectively meet the needs of your children.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I'm a winner. I'm Dixie.
Which camera? Hi, welcome back to Talking Point Live. I'm Eric Young with my co-host Jennifer Kohler. We're still getting used to the format here and what's going on, and we're coming to you live from the campus of Dixie State University on this beautiful Friday morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you. So our last topic today, the church, the church, isn't it funny how we just speak about it in definitive terms that way? The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints held a press conference here well, it's been about a week.
I think the 27th,
of January. Where they shocked a lot of people in coming out and saying, the church will back up the idea of having legislation out there that guarantees non-discrimination against lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender individuals, either in searching for housing or in employment that way.
Right.
They came out with a pretty well articulated 5-point press conference that got into those issues, but there was a caveat to that as well.
Well, it was interesting, and they've gotten some pushback from that, in that they bundled this support for LGBT rights with also a plea or a request or a statement about religious freedom. And a lot of people are resenting the fact that those two are bundled together. And I was thinking about that, and I thought, well, I can see how it would have been nice just to have the one thing come out and be a standalone piece, the support. On the other hand, I think they used that opportunity for the attention they were getting over the statement to capitalize on the opportunity to also bring up this issue of religious freedom, because I do sense a little hypocrisy sometimes where people are saying, oh, we need to be tolerant, 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 and yet some of those people are not real tolerant.
But isn't there hypocrisy in the idea that they're they're promoting a concept that we're in full support of legislation that looks at non-discrimination issues, while they go through and reserve the right to discriminate based on their religious beliefs.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that. You know, the example of there's providing housing for somebody, which was stated specifically, and then the example of refusing to take pictures at a wedding or bake a cake. And I was thinking, well, first of all, I don't see myself, no matter what my opinion is on a couple getting married, I don't see that baking a cake or taking a picture in any way causes me to violate my religious beliefs.
Yeah, some people see, though, that as condoning the lifestyle.
Right, but here's the thing. I think maybe at the nub of this whole thing is people don't want the government telling them what they have to do at certain levels of their business, right?
And we have the First Amendment of the Constitution that goes through and guarantees that religious freedom. We're already talking about.
Well, I'm talking about business people now.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, the person who is forced to bake the cake or provide the pictures.
Right.
I think they resent the incursion by the government in that sector.
Sure.
And so
the far-reaching.
I think that might be, and it's such a complex matter, but I think that might be underneath it. You know, resentment of this incursion on their rights.
Just the right or the resentment of
I just want to have the right. I might go ahead and do it just anyway, but I want to have the right.
So say I were a wedding photographer and
Yes.
somewhere within my own deeply held convictions, I felt that it was not right for me to go through and photograph LDS weddings.
Right.
And I have couples come to me and I say, well, really, I'd rather not shoot your wedding because of your religious affiliation.
Right.
Would that be?
Well, for me, I would go down the list of photographers and pick somebody else. Yes. So there's, housing and food is a
basic human
necessity,
right.
Who takes your wedding pictures or makes your cake? I don't know. Maybe.
No big deal.
Well, maybe we shouldn't make it a big deal.
It's interesting on this issue because there have been members of the LGBT community, prominent members, who have come out and said, I don't know why we're dissing on the LDS Church or taking this stance.
Yeah.
We should be grateful at least that they have thrown their institution behind this idea of preserving rights for lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual community,
right.
In defense of of housing and employment that way, even though certain religious freedoms are going to be.
Some people will say it's not enough. Other people will say we appreciate it. So I guess you can pick where you are in that.
Somewhere along that line.
Yeah.
Well, that's a sample of Talking Point Live. We'll be coming to you every Friday at 10 o'clock here from the campus of Dixie State University. And if you like to contribute to the conversation, you're more than welcome to do so. We are providing a hashtag on Twitter. It's hashtag TPLive is where we're at.
And if we get some more time, let's just talk quickly about Bluff Street. Because as you notice, they were out there working on Bluff Street.
They're surveying.
They are, but they're not. UDOT is not planning on building a big, massive structure there at the corner of Bluff and Sunset.
Nothing that breaks grade, at least, that we know of.
Right, at least not now, which is a huge improvement over what was going to be happening this month, because originally they were going to let the contract for bids on that massive structure. And for now, we've gotten a reprieve. They've backed off, and I really think this is an example of where some citizens took some responsibility and hammered away for maybe even 4 years now, and tried all kinds of, and they weren't protesting on the street, but they were working one-to-one with the bureaucracy and some elected officials, and we have a little success to celebrate.
They made a difference there. That is
They
a
did.
success to celebrate.
They did.
Well, great thanks to the crew here with the Community Education Channel for going through and producing this. Also, our thanks to Southern Utah Live. You can find a rebroadcast of this on southernutahlive.com, and you can download that and watch it just like you would do a Netflix show. So for today, February the 6th, I'm Eric Young, and my partner here,
Jennifer Kohler.
We'll see you next week.